I'd like to remind you of some points in the downtown secondary plan that would pertain to any development on this block. These include that development in the downtown should achieve a comfortable and intimate pedestrian environment, should be compatible with existing adjacent structures, should eliminate street-level parking lots, and create a sense of place in the downtown. To provide eyes on the street, which the mosque always did, to eliminate expanses of blank walls along street frontages, and to include streetscaping along various streets, including Mary and Catherine. It calls on the city to itself demonstrate leadership by ensuring that its own buildings and its own spaces are built to a high standard, and especially that public streets will be upgraded as development takes place. To reiterate that new parking lots will not be permitted, that all development will be oriented toward the streets with at-grade pedestrian entrances, and that loading and service entrances will be at the rear of buildings. That accessory parking will not be accommodated along the street frontage, and that buildings will be at least 2 stories in height. And finally, that sidewalks will be enhanced as development occurs, and that this may include using some land that's currently private. And finally, the secondary plan also specifies that public works will conform to this plan. There's also a Beasley neighborhood plan that was unanimously endorsed by the last council. And some of its goals include improving neighborhood design through livable street and traffic design, reducing the effects of crime, and improving interaction between neighbors. This is a photo of the police-owned property behind the mosque. The police have been very poor stewards of this property since they owned it. They've done nothing to beautify it. They don't clear their snow, they don't cut their weeds, and they've illegally used it as a storage site for vehicles. We have little confidence in light of that they will be better stewards of it in the future. There are examples in the world of community-oriented police buildings. This is the Saskatoon Police Services headquarters. It's 4 stories, it fronts onto the street, it incorporates a museum, a publicly accessible gym. This is the Toronto Police Service 51 Division, which reused a heritage building. And its parking footprint is entirely underground and on a parking deck. What we ask of the GIC is to forward to a recommendation to council that any development of an investigative services facility on this land will follow the letter and spirit of the downtown secondary plan and the Beasley neighborhood plan, to engage us in the design of this proposed building, to commit to the following particulars: that there will be no surface parking, that any surface parking will be on street, that the building will be dense mid-rise, using as little land as possible so that leftover land could be used for other residential or commercial development, to provide some space for community-oriented use such that the building is not dead outside of police working hours, and to follow through on improving the design of the surrounding streets. We further ask that this request for funding be rejected until the Police Services Board has made identical commitments to our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neary, for your presentation. Jason Farr, you have a... One sec.
Well, I want to thank not only Dr. Neary for his delegation here today, truly representing a very engaged Beasley Neighborhood Association, but for all that he does along with his wife and family and friends across the neighborhood. And certainly the BNA has made great strides thanks to people like John. So we've talked many times on this, and you know, just to the first point through you, Mr. Mayor, on the situation with the mosque, you clearly articulated it has a long and steeped history, and you shared an email exchange with yourself and Mayor Bobertina. I'm wondering if you could just kind of maybe go back to that slide if you're able to, John, while I...
Absolutely.
kind of try to share with my colleagues. First and foremost, I'll say that I still deal with Wahid and the Amin and others, and they are at a point now, much to the chagrin of the BNA and all those who sit around that massive community group table on a monthly basis, and subcommittees even more so. They're in a place now not too far from the neighborhood. Maybe Beasley would have preferred they stay where they are. Certainly, John has articulated that here today, but they are still downtown, and they're making the old barn site work just off York in central neighborhood, and we continue to work with them. I've had many meetings, and Larry Friday's helped out a lot, and others on staff as well. So I think they're at a point where they're very excited just to have some stable way forward as it relates to maintaining their ever-growing presence in the core, but certainly they are and continue to be a big part of the BNA and sat at that table for those regular meetings. So this is a good example of what I sort of walked into, and there was one meeting, and you said, John, BNA should have been there. One that I recollect a few years ago where we had representatives from the mosque, the chief of police, his senior staff on the file, and our city manager and myself. And we heard, and I think following on that meeting, we had some correspondence, you and I, and members of the Beasley Neighborhood Association, where it was said in that meeting that they could identify prior to 2010, there was a meeting in September, and this was significant for me because it meant I could go back to my colleagues and say, here, there's documented proof in some meeting minutes with representatives from the mosque and representatives from the city of Hamilton that we've made a commitment for that location to build that community, which was for the mosque, much more than just a mosque. It's a school, it's a community center, it's a Muslim community. They had stated that they had it in the minutes, but we never did get the minutes. So I ask you a two-part question through you, Chair. Is this the confirmation, this exchange here, as close to confirmation as you can get that the city of Hamilton had made some assurances, or did you ever get to see those minutes? I never did. We want to kind of put it past us now, but I never did see those minutes to confirm that, at least from that meeting, that we had made a commitment.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. I was not the president of the Beasley Neighborhood Association at any time, so I don't have access to all correspondence myself, at least not right now. I don't think there was ever an ironclad commitment that this would definitely happen. There were certainly, I would say, assurances of support at many times from yourself, from then Councillor and then Mayor Bertina, that the city would try to work out a solution. Ultimately, the solution was sunk last year when a report was brought to Council arguing that there is a parking shortage in Beasley and that the possibility of a land swap, having the police use an existing parking lot, could not be contemplated. You saw those overhead photos. I don't think there's any shortage of parking in central Beasley. Most of it is parking. But that was what killed the land swap in the end. Just to clarify, we don't have a problem with the police. We would welcome a police building if it is genuinely community-oriented. We're not even trying to save the land for the mosque. It's too late to keep the mosque in Beasley. I bring up that history simply to inform Mr. Mayor and the councillors that we have advocated for this for 4 years, and we do think we deserve urban-oriented development that fits the downtown secondary plan if we are going to have a police building there.
Okay, on to that now. I wanted to make a bit of a comment on the history. It goes back quite a ways. So with what you ask of the GIC through you, Mr. Mayor, to Dr. Neary, you're, I'm sure, perfectly fine with having a sit down with our general manager or the director of planning or some senior planners to go over these bullets, and I'll ask of staff at the appropriate time how they feel about what you're asking for here. I don't think it's overly demanding at all. You and I have already talked about this, and certainly I've already, since you and I have talked to the general manager of planning, but we'll get him on the record here today. So you have a subcommittee or somebody that can continue to work with staff as we move forward when and if this facility were to come into place to make certain that it's compatible with the goals of the neighborhood?
That is what we're asking for at this point. Thank you, Councillor Farr.
Okay, thanks again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
I'll
thank you.
have a question
go
for
away.
staff at the
Yep.
appropriate.
Councillor Whitehead has a question as well.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the presentation. And there are good examples where the police services does integrate their plan with the community. The mountain station is a good example of that, with the well-utilized skateboard park right next door to the facility, as well as the YMCA gym, library, etc. So there are good examples where the police services, the city, partner to ensure that we enrich the surrounding neighborhood. And there's no reason why we couldn't do that here. The question I have is, have you made a request to the Police Services Board to have an opportunity to provide the delegation that you provided here today?
We have not to this point. We have sent correspondence to the Police Services Board. We had always thought within the Beasley Neighbours Association that the proper venue to bring our concerns to was the City Council through our own councillor, and perhaps we were incorrect in that supposition. In hindsight, I wish we had gone to the Police Services Board directly. But we have corresponded with them, and again, we have not had a satisfactory response to our correspondence in the past.
I appreciate that. I would suggest then that you make an application for delegation status for the Police Services Board, 1, and 2. It is a combination of site planning as well as meeting the needs of the police services. So there is a sort of a partnership in the development of those lands, and I think it is beneficial for you to make this presentation here today, and I want to thank you for that. It would also be beneficial for you to make the same presentation to the Police Services Board. So thank you.
I appreciate that, Councillor Whitehead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Neary, for your presentations. Any further questions of Mr. Neary? Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, I apologize. I came in late. I was doing a talk on the Bill Kelly Show about our favorite stadium, and so I missed this presentation. I didn't know it was coming on today, but I can tell you that the police have had that forensic building delayed for about 10 years, trying to sort out the issues with the mosque. From my own personal perspective, I thought that was behind us when the mosque purchased the property on York Boulevard and moved down there. That forensic building is something that's desperately needed, particularly with current DNA, and I'll be able to explain that to my council colleagues when we get in camera on this. But I think it would be a serious problem, because we have to get out and get funding from the other 2 levels of government. The board approved this project in 2010. The design is nearing completion. Council approved $750,000 in the 2012 budget, 2013 budget for the design, and the police out of their reserves put in another $750,000. So it's fully designed. So our mandate now is to get to the other 2 levels of government to get participation in helping to fund this, and you'll see that later on in the agenda today. So through you, if I can, to the presenter, and I apologize for missing some of your presentation. So your issue is not with the police building. You agree that your mosque has been relocated down to York Boulevard. You agree that your current mosque, your former mosque, is up for sale now, and that's on our agenda for later on in the agenda also. What is to be gained by delaying this again?
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. You are correct that the mosque is leaving Beasley, and there's nothing to be done about that. The BNA does not oppose the construction of an investigative services building on that site per se. We simply want to ensure that it is built according to the standards of the downtown secondary plan, that the design of the building will respect the downtown secondary plan, respect the Beasley neighborhood plan that was endorsed by the last council, and will provide a positive physical environment in our neighborhood, as opposed to being kind of a dead building with blank walls facing the street.
What you're looking for is design aspects then, what the facade will look like? Is that your ask today through you, Mr. Mayor?
Why don't we pop the slide up that indicated the request. There it is.
So it's more than a facade. We want to see a building built with the appropriate density for a downtown space that doesn't unnecessarily waste land that could be used for other types of residential or commercial development, that would itself be a force for good in our neighborhood and would also provide needed tax revenue for the city.
Okay, I suspect through you then, Mr. Mayor, the right thing to be, as Councillor Whitehead said, is come to the Police Services Board and ask to be able to review the design drawings that are nearing completion before we approve them. Because I think we would be more than happy to share that with the community. I mean, it's taxpayers' money. Why wouldn't we? And as chair of the board, I can tell you I'll fully support it, and I think Councillor Whitehead and the board would also support it based on his earlier comments. So that should be your ask, is to see, and maybe write down, I see Dan, the staff person who's heading this up, and he's nodding that this is something we could do. By all means, you know, make a common delegation to the police board, ask for that, and then our staff would be happy to go over it with you, and any concerns you have about the optics of the building, you can come back to us for consideration. Is that reasonable through you, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Ultimately, what we are looking for at this point is good design. I'm here speaking to you today because the Police Services Board is asking for this funding, and I am concerned that when the funding is issued, the General Issues Committee and the Council will not have, the ship will have sailed, and if the Police Services Board decides to build a building that does not respect the design principles we're asking for, it may be too late for Council to exert control over that. That's my only lingering concern.
Your concern, then I can guarantee you, and I think Councillor Whitehead will support me on this, he'll give you a chance to give input in the design. We're not asking for the building to get constructed today. What we're asking for is a commitment from the city that we support the project, because the province won't even accept an application until they know that the city's on side. The federal government won't accept an application unless the province. We're a long ways away yet from putting a shovel in the ground, because we have to go through those approval processes. So
I think we know what the ask is, and I think there's two overtures. Police Services Board presentation, I think, would be helpful, and I'll support that as well. And Councillor Farr, you had another question of staff, about an overture there as well, to sit down with staff and talk about some of the design principles that Mr. Neary is talking about. So
Yeah, I might even formalize that in a motion. I'll receive the delegation if there's no one.
okay. So let's do that. Let's thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much. And moved by Councillor Farr, second by Councillor Johnson, that we received the presentation. Councillor Aidan Johnson. Yeah, the other Johnson. Good point. Boy, I'm getting it cleared up early. This is good. Well, I think they're both good looking personally. That's like. Yes.
At least months.
So moved and seconded, supported by everyone. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Farr, you had some other.
Just to our General Manager of Planning and Economic Development, we had a brief chat about this the other day after running into John on the street, as a matter of fact. So through you to our Jason Thorne, when you see what's being asked of us from the Beasley Neighborhood Association, your thoughts?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So we don't have a formal submission in yet for this site. It would have eventually require to go through the site plan process. Certainly the things that Mr. Neary has raised in his presentation, many of those are drawn directly out of the city's official plan. Those are the exact kinds of urban design principles we'd be looking at the site plan process. I think planning staff shares the view that this would be a site we'd be looking for a very strong urban character, something that supports the urban character of that neighborhood, supports the pedestrian realm, all the things that we talk about in the secondary plan, official plan, which includes those points on the slide as well as some others, are the types of things we'll be looking at through the site plan process.
And through you, one thing that hasn't been requested of John, our delegate, but Councillor Collins moved about a year and a half ago, and I was proud to second, was the design review panel that we have now established. And I know that this particular parcel fits within the footprint of permitting that committee from taking a look at this. Is that something we could achieve at the appropriate time as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it is.
That's fantastic news, and I'm sure John will be happy to bring that back to the BNA and learn more about what that panel does and how it looks at actually some of the things that you're concerned about here. Would you be, through you, Mr. Mayor, last question, opposed to yourself or one of your senior staffers sitting down sooner rather than later with our friends from the Beasley Neighborhood Association, just to maybe look at what is being requested and the issue more generally?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'd be happy to do that.
I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if I should just take direction or move formally to give some peace of mind to our friends from the BNA that the appropriate staff from Planning and Economic Development be requested to meet with reps from the Beasley community respecting the design build aspects of a potential investigative services facility, and maybe invite some of the reps from Hamilton Police Services.
That sounds like a motion to me. So if you want to move that, it's moved and seconded by Councillor Green. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Great. Thank you all very much. Mr. Neary, thank you for your presentation, and we'll look forward to seeing you at Police Services Board and in discussion with our staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council, for your support on this.
Great. Thank you. Seeing as there are no staff presentations, we can unshutter the world here and go to discussion items. So item 8.1, consent to registered trademark. Moved by Collins, seconded by Whitehead. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.2, Web Redevelopment and Service Channel Subcommittee. Moved by, what did I hear? Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All in favor? Carried. Item number 8.3, Pan Am. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Whitehead. All in favor? Carried. Item 8.4, moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Eden Johnson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.5. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Johnson. The other Johnson, the Brenda Johnson, out of the beautiful town of Pembroke. What else? And the beautiful Brenda Johnson, yes. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Carried. Item 8.6. Councillor Burke.
Just a question through to Eileen, if I can. Eileen, traditionally when these the nomination of the board reps come to GIC and on to council, the ward councillor has been listed as a member of the board, and I don't see it on this one. Curious to know how come.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Stephanie actually had advised that that was done incorrectly in the past, having the councillors listed to be accepted through council today, as that was previously done at your inauguration.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the councillors were appointed.
Speak up, please. I can't hear you.
The councillors were all appointed to the BIAs through the inaugural, through the motion that was passed at the inaugural. So they have been removed from Eileen's reports because you were all appointed at the inaugural.
Because this on a consensus issue, this could be looked up by other board members. And why are you voting? You're not listed in the resolution as a member of this board. What's the downside of also including it here as a member of the board? Just so it's very clear.
Because you have two resolutions. You only need one. Council has already approved the resolution to appoint you. So having it twice, we would never have two resolutions.
Okay, I wasn't aware. I didn't see it at the inaugural, the appointments to all the BIA boards.
It is.
It might have been buried in an omnibus resolution.
Yes.
Why did you make this change? Because you're going to make it confusing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I did not make the change. The change was decided by the deputy clerk at the time. And to the best of my knowledge, it's been done there before. If it was duplicated in the report before, it wasn't caught, so it was left. But historically, the members are appointed to all committees at the inaugural.
So in the case of, say, because I didn't see the resolution at the inaugural, because it must have been, as I say, an omnibus resolution, what happens in the case of a concession BIA where it crosses two ward boundaries?
There were several councillors listed in that, and it was the motion that was in the council agenda at the inaugural listed all the names, all the BIAs. It was, each committee was listed with all the membership underneath it. So the BIAs that crossed over ward boundaries had several councillors appointed to it.
Okay. You know, Mr. Mayor, I'm a little uncomfortable with this because it's not clear. being laid out in the resolution for the appointment of the board that the ward councillors aren't listed, but I'll see what other members of council think. And at the very minimum, I'd like to see that resolution again.
I could pull it up for you right now, but there have been appointments, so in order for me to add it to this, I would have to change the other one. It would not be appropriate to add the board members here. You would have to amend the resolution that was already put before at the inaugural meeting to add any members that may or may not be missing, but I will certainly pull it up now, but it was in the agenda with all members listed.
Okay, thank you.
We'll see what other committee members think.
Okay, I've had no indication of other speakers on this, but we can recirculate the document that was passed at council at the inauguration. Councillor Green.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the Madam Clerk, I just wanted to declare, especially with item 811, I own a business on Ottawa Street, and I just wanted to make that declaration of any potential conflict of interest. It has been noted, and there is an opinion forthcoming. I just wanted to make sure it was on the record.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments from anyone else? So we have a number of BIA budget items here. Do you want to deal with them separately or as a group? Collectively, so it's items, let's see here, let's see, 8-6 through to 827. Moved by Councillor Whitehead, seconded by Councillor Duval. I had first, sorry. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going back to Councillor Ferguson's concerns, I'm sure there's a way we can deal with this, Stephanie, and through Eileen, that if this goes to the BIAs, that the appendix from the inaugural of the appointments can also be attached. I mean, it's a simple solution.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, all of the BIAs are sent correspondence from the inaugural, so they will have received or will be receiving a letter anyway, letting them know what came through at the inaugural.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that Councillor Ferguson's legal. Thank you.
All agencies, boards, and committees that are outside the city of Hamilton are advised.
So it'll be abundantly clear who's on each of those BIAs, and it'll be clear to all the members there. Okay, good. So on those items then, all the way through, items through to 827, all in favor? Carried. Item 828, appointment of members of council of the board of directors. A motion for that? Moved by Councillor Green, seconded by Councillor Partridge. All in favor? Carried.
Mr. Mayor, what if I could just, similar to Councillor Green, I want to declare a potential or conflict of interest on a motion that's coming up, 9.2, for Uber, because I'm involved in the transportation industry. So if the clerk could note that. And also, if you permit me to, and council doesn't boo me out of the place, I would like to just ask a quick question about 5.1, because once again, I wasn't in the council chambers for that. And at 5.1, is that okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah. Mike, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mike, on page 2 of 5.1, this is the Court Security and Prisoner Transportation Program. As Councillor Whitehead will know, and Councillor Collins will know, we've enjoyed a $750,000 annual uplift in court cost, which I can see is 704, 948 in 12, 13, and 14, but it's dropping to 430,000. That's a loss of $300,000. And it's been projected that that $700,000 uplift is going to continue for quite some time. Can you explain why we're down $300,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's two factors that are contributing to the change. So to the table that Councillor Ferguson is speaking to on page 2 of the report, you'll see that the percentage uplift is decreasing from 4% to 3.6%. And the two factors that are affecting the change is the funding commitment by the province as it relates to the upload. The total commitment across the province is $125 million, and that is not changing. The total amount of that funding commitment isn't changing. What is changing, the number of eligible municipalities is increasing. So the fact that now you're adding additional eligible municipalities to a fixed funding envelope, that's having the impact of reducing the dollar amounts to some eligible municipalities. The other factor that is affecting Hamilton relative to other municipalities is Hamilton Police Services were actually cost effective and reduced the cost of court security, and as a result, their funding allocation decreased relative to some municipalities who had an increase in their court security over the same period of time. So those are the two factors, through you, Mr. Mayor, that are affecting Hamilton relative to other municipalities.
Thank you. I understood the second part was the biggest component. Is because we're efficient, we lost 300 grand.
For you, Mr. Mayor, because Hamilton Police Services, as it relates to this service, was efficient relative to the other eligible municipalities, that is contributing to the reduction in funding.
Interesting. Thank you.
Sometimes being good costs us, unfortunately. On item 9.1, we're going to turn to, that one has been withdrawn, so we are now, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I pulled up the resolution, if you'd like me to read it out loud from the inaugural, if it makes councillors feel better, or I cannot
can you
put it on
up?
the screen,
Can't do it?
no.
Yeah, just give it a quick read.
Magic
yeah.
I can't do. Aidan Johnson to the Main West Esplanade, Locke Street, and Westdale Village. Councillor Jason Farr, Barton Village, Downtown
Okay.
Hamilton, International Village, and King Street West. Councillor Matthew Green, Barton Village, International Village, and Ottawa Street. Councillor Sam Marula, Ottawa Street. Councillors Jackson and Duval, Concession Street. Councillor Conley, Stony Creek. Councillor Ferguson, Ancaster. Councillor Vanderbeek, Dundas. Councillor Partridge, Waterdown.
Okay, Stephanie, thank you. But you're still going to circulate that and add it to the reports that are going back to the BIAs, right? Yes.
A letter is being sent as part of the council follow-up to the inaugural to all outside boards and agencies and BIAs advising them of the appointments. A lot of them have already been done, so they will have the information.
Great. Thank you very much, Stephanie. On motions, we had item 9.1 withdrawn, and on item 9.2, Uber ride sharing, Councillor Marula, would you like to introduce your motion? Yeah, hard to hear you, unfortunately. Yeah, don't know why. You know what? I'll turn mine off.
Hello, hello. This must be a conspiracy.
Just trying to get people.
I didn't think you
Stop
ever had trouble
silencing
being
me,
heard,
damn it.
Sam, but go for it.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Collins. Whereas the City of Hamilton encourages innovation and new business, and whereas Uber Ride Sharing Company serves as an online taxi broker connecting potential riders with private drivers, and whereas the taxi industry is heavily regulated for reasons of public safety and consumer protection, therefore be it resolved that licensing staff be directed to meet with the principals of Uber Ride Sharing to discuss the feasibility of an Uber service in Hamilton which would comply with provincial and municipal regulations, protect public safety, and promote fair competition within the taxi industry. And Mr. Mayor, I think it's important to recognize and acknowledge that this particular issue is an international issue that will have a significant local impact if indeed Hamilton is part of Uber's plan or business plan to incorporate Hamilton as a place to do business. In saying that, we have a heavily regulated taxi industry that for over the last number of decades, we have increased regulations in the name of public safety and in the name of better service. We have a training process, we have a licensing process, there's also revenue streams that supports the inspection component of our taxi industry, which is an extension of our public transit service, and it is incumbent of us to put a plan of action together in the event that they do indeed, or that Uber indeed decides to move into Hamilton. I also believe that this has various impacts from an industry standpoint as well. As you know, Mr. Mayor, we have hundreds of taxi drivers who are reliant as an income in the taxi industry. We also have a number of brokers, and we also have companies that are paying taxes and employing people locally. I think the industry, who over the years, at times, it's been inconsistent, unpredictable, but for the most part, it's become very unchaotic as a result of the regulatory components that we have implemented quite aggressively. So in saying that, I think it's important that if indeed there is an intent here, that we have a framework in place. I consulted with Marty Hazel, and clearly staff concurs with the concerns that I've outlined. And being ahead of this particular issue is very, I guess, important only because we don't want to be in a situation where we have a knee-jerk reaction to the scenario, as did Toronto, where and other municipalities or jurisdictions throughout the world who are now taking legal action subsequent to the operation being implemented in the city. So anytime we have an opportunity to be proactive rather than reactive, I think that opportunity is a sage initiative, and as a result, I look forward to your support. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you. And Councillor Partridge, and then Councillor Whitehead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm wondering if just through you, if I could, I think I understand the intent of the motion, but the way that it's worded, I just threw you to the councillor, if I could just get some further clarification. The way it's worded, it says to discuss the feasibility of an Uber service in Hamilton, which sounds like we're inviting them to come and set up their operation in Hamilton. But what I understood from your explanation is that you really want to be proactive, get ahead of the curve, and understand the operation of Uber and what it would mean if they did locate in Hamilton. And I think that's different from the way that it's worded. But if I could just get some clarification through you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rula.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Partridge, actually, the feasibility is just in essence to assess what their intent is, to then cross-reference that intent with municipal and provincial regulatory legislation and policies to see if indeed it can be feasible. So in essence, the intent is to determine the feasibility, but to study it in order to conclude whether or not it is feasible. So if we conclude that it isn't, hence the conclusion would be it's not in our best interest.
All right, thank you very much. That explains it, and I do support it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support what's before us, and there's very concerning issues regarding our vulnerable and sensitivity to the accountability and the transparency of our service. As a chair, a past chair of the licensing tribunal, I can tell you that there is an accountable process that deals with inferior operators or inferior service, and I'm not sure how a licensing tribunal would have any effect on something like Uber. So I think we need to understand those interfaces and how we ensure the safety of the riding public for such a service. So I overwhelmingly support what's being put before us today.
Okay, thank you. If I could ask Councillor Collins to take chair for a moment, and thank Councillor Marula for being proactive on this. I mean, you know what my sense of this is that this is sweeping the world whether we like it or not. And so we better get out ahead of this thing and get an understanding of what's going on and how it might operate and what kind of effect it will have on our licensing regime as we move forward. So I really want to commend the councillor for getting out ahead of this. All too often we wait for them to show up and then we start to react to things, and now we have an opportunity to actually get out ahead of this and be proactive on this issue. So I support this fully. I think it makes perfect sense. Not suggesting, I don't think any of us are, that we're saying that Uber is something that we desire to have in Hamilton, but if it is sweeping the world, and it seems to be, then let's make sure that we at least understand what's coming down our way. So congratulations for a proactive motion here, and I fully support it, and I hope we can get together with these folks sooner rather than later. Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments on that issue? Hearing not, moved by Councillor Marula, second by Councillor Collins. All in favor of that motion? Carried. Thank you very much. General information and other issues, or notices of motion. Sorry, any other notices of motion? Hearing none. General information and other business. Are there any items of general information or other business? Hearing none either, then I need to entertain a motion to go into camera on a number of private and confidential issues. Moved by Councillor Van de Beek, seconded by Councillor Partridge. All in favor to go into camera? I think I have to read a section here, don't I?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if it is the committee's wish, you can actually approve the closed session minutes in open session unless there's discussion.
Okay, you want to move the entire package of minutes?
No,
Is that
no,
what you're saying?
just the closed session minutes.
Oh,
in
yeah, the
open
minutes.
session.
No, okay, no, that's fine, yeah. Closed
And then-
session minutes can be moved. So moved by Ferguson, second by Partridge, all in favor? Carried. Motion moving to camera, so I do have to say to discuss Appendix A, to report PSB 10064B respecting the 25th